We always expect them to do like a punch over their weight, but they've shown us time and time again that they are a good team. They are good, and no one's disputing that. But they're not great. They're not going to take that next step to be. Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, October 12th edition of the TV on Basketball Podcast with your host, TV. Hope you're all having a fantastic day and thank you for clicking on to watch or listen to today's episode. Before we start, I do have to plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for other great content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That would be highly appreciated so you won't miss an episode. There's a lot of great content coming out soon, so you wouldn't want to miss out on that. And for all my podcast listeners, remember if you're on Apple, leave a review. That will really help get this podcast out there. Have more people listening to the pod. And as for my Spotify, Anchor, and Podbean listeners, just continue to show your support in any way possible. That would be highly, highly appreciated. I have an awesome show lined up for you today. This episode is long overdue, but I'm finally be doing my NBA season preview. And I'm going to be starting with the Western Conference. I'm going to be making my predictions where each team is going to rank and kind of see where how I think this team is going to do. I'm going to talk about some of their offseason moves and talk about how maybe they might make the playoffs, maybe they might not, and if anything they did in the offseason really is going to affect them, and just look at the overall picture. But we're going to be focusing just on the Western Conference today, so it's going to be a good episode. Going to be probably a long one, so sit back, relax, and just listen, because it's going to be a lot of great talking, and I'm going to get to every single Western Conference team. So that means if you're in the if you're a Western Conference, if you're a fan of a team in the Western Conference, I'm going to get to them eventually, and I'm going to talk a good bit about them. So it's going to be a great episode. It's going to be a long one. And that means I'm going to be doing the Eastern Conference one on Friday, so be on the lookout for that. Hopefully I do have a guest on the show on that as well. And if you haven't already, check out my NBA 75 episode that I recorded last Friday with Jalen from the Hoop Talk podcast. Definitely go check it out. That was a really fun episode. Really, really good. I think you guys will enjoy it if you haven't listened to it already. But yeah, the preseason's coming to a close. The NBA season starts next next Tuesday. So we're getting closer and closer. So we're going to have to get these previews out there. And of course, eventually I'm going to get to my NBA awards predictions, which is going to be very, very soon. So also be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I think I rambled on enough. Let's get right into the episode. I'm really excited to talk about this. Just like last year, I'm going to be going from 15 to 1, talking about who I think is going to be the worst team, and then all the way who I think is going to be the best regular season team. I might talk about their ceiling and their floor. I also talk about that as well. But yeah, let's get right into it. And let's start off at number 15. And I believe the worst team in the West this year, at least record-wise, is going to be the Houston Rockets. Yes, the Houston Rockets, I believe, is going to have the worst record in the West. Last year, I predicted them to be 9th. I think that was before I knew that John Wall was going to be... I think I made an episode before John Wall was traded or something like that. And I think, no, this is when James Harden was still on the team. So I thought they were going to be better, but they turned out to be actually 15th in the West last year, going 17-55. They did not have a great season. Obviously, the John Wall injury hurt them as well. And they're basically playing a bunch of young guys. But their most valuable player is going to be Christian Wood. I think one of their key additions, their biggest addition was Jalen Green. And the player to watch is Kevin Porter Jr. I have them finishing around the 23-24 win range. I think their floor is the 15th seed, but they can really go as high as maybe the 13th or 12th seed. Not much of a difference there, but the thing about the Houston Rockets is there's just so many moving parts in that team. There's a lot of question marks because they are they're extending on their young core. They already had Christian Wood. They already had Kevin Porter Jr. But now they're bringing people like Jalen Green, the number 2 overall pick, Alperen Şengün, the 16th overall pick, Usman Garuba, Josh Christopher. They had 4 picks in the first round, and they're going to be trying to add these guys to the rotation. Obviously, they brought back David Nwaba. They traded for Daniel Tice. But they still have quite a similar roster than they had last season. They still want to try to find minutes for Kenyon Martin Jr. as well. And this team is just very young, very inexperienced. And you could really say for the same thing about the head coach. Stephen Silas, only his second season with the team. The only thing I'm hoping for him is just some sort of stability. Like last year was just absolutely crazy with what he had to deal with. First with the James Harden stuff, and then the John Wall stuff. I mean, this guy had to deal with so much last year. Hopefully, he can have some sort of stability this year, so he can actually learn to coach his team and kind of help them develop. And that's really all they're hoping for this year. It's just a good year of development, making sure Jalen Green, looking to see if he's the star that they were hoping for or not. Trying to look at other people like Alperen Sengun and see how he fits next to Christian Wood, see where Usman Garuba fits in all of this. It's going to be a lot of figuring out for the Houston Rockets. And with such a huge overhaul in terms of new players coming in, it's going to be really interesting to see how this is going to play out. I am a big fan of their draft class, though. Jalen Green at #2. This guy looks like he has star potential. I'm a huge fan of Alperen Sengun, the MVP of the Turkish League last year. And then just good potential pieces going forward, Josh Christopher and Usman Garuba. I went to the Raptors game on Thanksgiving, and I saw some flashes of great things, especially from Kevin Porter Jr. Christian Wood looked really good yesterday. Even someone named Armani Brooks, who I don't know if he's going to make the active roster, but he looked good yesterday. And then obviously those 4 draft picks showed that they could be contributors hopefully right away. So, yeah, I mean, the Houston Rockets, I think they're going to be a fun team to watch, although I have them as the worst team in the West at the moment. But there's going to be a bunch of young guys. They're going to get a lot of shots off. They're just going to have to figure out how things are going to work together and just improve together as a team, build that chemistry. I think that's what's extremely important this year. I don't think the Houston Rockets or their fans expect them to be super high up the standings, but let's just hope that the draft picks that they have continue to work out, and let's see if they can add another young piece if they do have a bad season again this year. So, yeah, right now at number 15, I have the Houston Rockets. Coming at number 14, and honestly, right before this episode, I was gonna have this team last, and then the Houston Rockets 15th, and then 14th, but this team put up a lot of a good fight last year, and they really had to forcefully tank for them to be bad. And this team I'm talking about is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Last year I thought they were going to be the 15th team in the West, but they ended up being the 14th, 22-50. But let's be honest, they had a solid start to the season. I think they were played too good for their own good, and that's when the organization was like, whoa, we're playing too good. We need to kind of dial it back a bit and actually get a good pick, because that's really what last year was supposed to be for. So they ended up getting the 6th pick. They got Josh Giddey, and I think it's gonna be another year sort of a rebuild in a sense. I still think they're gonna be competitive. I mean, SGA, for me, he's a borderline all-star. I think he's gonna be in for another great year. I'm excited to see how someone like Alexei Pokusevsky is gonna develop. Someone like Lou Dort as well. I mean, Lou Dort in the preseason has looked great. He looks confident in his shot. Very, very excited to see how he is going to do. But really, the thing about this team is that there's just, again, a lot of young pieces, a lot of just developing needed for this team. I mean, their coach, I always pronounce this guy's name wrong, Mark Daigneault, still a very, there's only a second year as a head coach there. For him, he's just trying to figure out how who they want to keep in long term, and who they're just kind of experimenting a lot at this point. But the thing is, they still have their core. A lot of these guys still play together. With Darius Baisley, you got still there Isaiah Roby, like I said, Mike Muscala was still there from last year. Shea, it's a lot of the same players from last year, except adding people like Trey Mann, Josh Giddey, who they drafted, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and Aaron Wiggins. They're going to try and fit those guys as well, but at the end of the day, it's just a lot of development needed for this team. And I think that they're still going to put up a good fight just because they showed that they can do that last year. And I think, obviously, these guys are just not going to forcefully lose games. They want to be competitive. They want to improve as a team. And the Thunder, a lot of young pieces, a lot of young pieces. Again, it's just another year just trying to figure out who do they want to keep around, because I still think that their big man situation is kind of questionable. I'm not like fully sold on a Darius Baisley, Isaiah Roby front court. Maybe they can look into not really trading, but maybe that's gonna be like a focus of next offseason if these guys don't really develop the way they want to. And yeah, just a lot of experimenting. Hopefully we get another great year out of Shea or Shy, whoever you want to call him. And just figuring out how someone like Josh Giddey's going to fit in there. I mean, the 6'9" point guard, this guy's a great passer. Like, where's he going to fit in? Is he going to be kind of like a point forward? Is he actually going to play point guard alongside people like Shea and Lou Dort? Because his defense is kind of questionable. And I think, again, this year, there's not much to expect of this team. It's just what is the identity? They're just trying to figure out what their identity is. I think they're in for the long term with Mike Daigneault as well. They just have to figure out like who they are as a team, and hopefully they can stick to that and stick to the plan. They have a bunch of draft picks, and I'm not gonna doubt their GM Sam Presti and all that, but sooner rather than later they're gonna have to trade these picks as well. So that's something else to look out for. The Thunder is not going to be that great, but I still think they're going to be like a fun team to watch. I have them coming at 14th. Coming in at 13th, I have a team that did make the play-in tournament, but they lost some pieces. I really do think they're really going to drop off this year. I'm going to be talking about the San Antonio Spurs. Last year, I predicted they were going to be the 13th seed, but they ended up finishing as the 10th seed, going 33-39, and getting absolutely destroyed in the I think they got destroyed in the playing game. If not, it was like no, they didn't. It was pretty close, but man, it looked rough, that offense. Some guys they add to their team. Joshua Primo with the 12th pick. Obviously, I talked about that in the past. It was a reach. Joe Wieskamp, 41st pick, and then they also added people like Doug McDermott, Zach Collins. They brought back Brent Forbes, and they also signed Jack Landale. But they also had some key losses. DeMar DeRozan getting traded to the Bulls. Rudy Gay to the Jazz. Trey Lyles to the Pistons. Patty Mills leaving for the Brooklyn Nets. If you look at the talent of this team, like I'm looking at their team right now, they should be one of the worst teams in the West. I mean, they got their backcourt right now is DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Josh Primo. I mean, it's a lot of question marks on that team. And a lot of young players. But the thing is, Greg Popovich is still the coach of this team. He's going to have them fighting. He's going to have them fighting no matter what. I mean, I am a fan of some of their young pieces like a Keldon Johnson, like DeJounte Murray. But just their talent, man. Their talent is just not there. This is possibly Pop's last year as well, so I think that the players are going to give them an extra fight. But at this point, they just have to embrace the rebuild. I know it's been a while since the Spurs have been like this bad. I mean, for the past, since they drafted Tim Duncan, they had to go through that whole Spurs dynasty. And then after the Spurs dynasty, I mean, they had Kawhi Leonard for a bit before he got traded. And then the time when they had DeMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan, they were still a solid team. I mean, this is probably the first year in decades where the Spurs are like, this is not a good team. This is a young team. This is a rebuilding team. And they got to embrace it. I know Pop is still there, and I know they're going to fight for him. But they need to start, drafting young players, fitting in with their young core, and kind of starting fresh. They added Josh Primo to the team. I'm still, that was kind of a reach, like I mentioned in my draft review episode. A lot of people expected him to go in the late 20s, and he ended up going 12th. But I think someone we have to look forward to this season and seeing if he's going to take the huge jump is someone like a Keldon Johnson. Playing for Team USA, learning under those guys, playing for Coach Pop there. Hopefully he's learned a lot from that, and he can kind of advance his game into being, maybe a potential cornerstone piece for the Spurs team. Because just like the Thunder, just like the Rockets, they kind of have to figure out who they want to keep long term, who do they think is going to be good, maybe a valuable trade assets going forward. But just kind of figure out what direction they want to go with this team. A lot of young players, but the thing is, people like DeJounte Murray, they are young, but they're slowly creeping up to that to those prime years, and you just have to start, drafting good now. You gotta start getting those good draft picks now, and then so you can set yourself up for the future. Even though this is gonna be Pop's last year, most likely gonna be Pop's last year, I think that they're still gonna try and fight. But I just don't think, like I mentioned earlier, their talent is just not there for them to really, go past this. Especially like the next game I'm gonna be talking about, I think is on another level than them, which is not saying much, but the talent is just not there. I don't think they're gonna get too far. I have them going 13th. Coming in at number 12, I'm going to be talking about the first California team, I believe. Yes, the first California team. And we're going to be talking about the Sacramento Kings. Last year, I predicted them to go 14th. They ended up going 12, 31 and 41. This year, I'm predicting them to go about 35 and 47. So you could say it's a bit worse. You could say it's a bit better. However you want to look at it. Obviously, their most valuable player is De'Aaron Fox. The key draft pick they made this year is drafting another guard in Davion Mitchell. And for me, the player to watch is Marvin Bagley III. I'm looking at this Kings team and I'm like, why haven't they made more changes? Right now, there's just so many, right now they're 3-0 preseason. Fine, they're winning. They won the Summer League Championship, yada, yada, yada. De'Aaron Fox is going to be the star player of this team, of course, and Tyrese Haliburton has shown great signs in his rookie season. I believe he was even second in Rookie of the Year or third. I think no, he was third. He was third in Rookie of the Year voting. But Buddy Hield, I just don't understand why he's still on this team. Marvin Bagley, I know the Kings want to believe in him still, but with all the things that happened last year and kind of like the direction of this team is going, is Marvin Bagley going to be a long-term piece for this team? I'm surprised they didn't even ship him off this offseason. And another thing about the Kings, why is Luke Walton still there? It's like they're stubborn in their own ways. Like they know there's issues within their team. They see someone like Buddy Hield who's been wanting to get out for the past 2 seasons now. They still have him on the team. They see someone like Marvin Bagley who him and his dad have been complaining about his role on his team. They haven't dealt with that yet. And even their draft choices. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Davion Mitchell. I think he could be a good player in this league. But why to the Kings? Why did the Kings need to draft him when they already had their future backcourt set and Reese and De'Aaron Fox? When you could have maybe gone for another wing player. I think this team still could be solid. Right now, I think their floor is probably the 13th or 14th seed. Their ceiling, I think they can make a play in. They do have the talent, but I'm just surprised that they really haven't made any moves here. De'Aaron Fox, he did sign that long-term contract. He is getting into his entering his mid-20s very soon. I just don't want them to waste De'Aaron Fox's years because for me, he's an underrated point guard because no one really talks about him as in the top point guard discussion, but he is for sure a top 10 point guard, bordering on top 5 soon. They have the talent there in De'Aaron Fox. They got Tyrese Haliburton, who I hope to continue to be continued development for him. But I think that with the Kings, they're just staying stagnant. I mean, they will have runs in the season like they do every year where they're going to convince people oh, maybe this year's going to be different, and they're going to fall flat again. That's what's going to happen. The backcourt is just too crowded, and there's just potential just exploding pieces there. Like a lot of personalities with a Buddy Hield saying, why am I still here? Or a Marvin Bagley saying, why am I still here? I just think there's a lot of potential drama there, and the fact that they really haven't really addressed any of their issues is just concerning to me, and I think it's just going to be another disappointing year for the Kings. Haven't made the playoffs in 2004. I don't think it's going to happen again this year. I really don't. That's why I have them 12. Coming in at number 11. I should really speed up here, man. It's almost been 20 minutes, but let's go into the number 11 seed. And for this team is definitely could be a play-in team, but man, I'm just again another year. I think same as last year. I had the same complaint about this team. It's just the fit. I'm just not a huge fan of it. But coming at number 11, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. I predicted them to get into the play-in tournament last year, and they were very close. But they really just sucked. They really sucked at the end of the season last year, and they ended up finishing 11th, going 31 and 41. This year, I still don't have them going in 500. I have them going 38 and 44. Their most valuable player is Zion Williamson. Their key addition that they've made was Jonas Valanciunas, and the player to watch for me is Devontae Graham. The thing about the Pelicans is, for me, the floor is probably the 12th, maybe the 13th seed. I don't think they're going to go past that just because Zion is that good and they have the talent in Brandon Ingram. They got Devontae Graham, Jonas Valanciunas. They're just too talented to go, honestly, past the 13th seed. They're just too talented for that. But again, another thing, same as last year, the team construction for me is very questionable. I don't know why they should have re-signed Lonzo Ball. For me, I thought he was a great fit with Zion and Brandon Ingram. Instead, they had to bring in Devontae Graham on a 3-year, near $40 million deal. It just, last year the defense was really bad. I don't think they addressed any of that this year. I think their offense will be fine, and they do have a first-year head coach in Willie Green. I just think there's a lot of question marks with this team. Who's going to be starting? Who's going to be kind of the closing lineup for this team? I mean, it's probably going to be Zion. It's probably going to be Brandon Ingram. More than likely, it's Devontae Graham. But past that, Josh Hart could be a possibility. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Will Jackson Hayes get more minutes? I don't know. There's just a lot of question marks with this New Orleans Pelicans team. And it's already off to a slow start. I mean, Zion Williamson is going to miss the start of the season more than likely because of, I think, surgery. Because he got off-season surgery, which is a kind of a surprise. And, they're just going down the same path for me is like they did with Anthony Davis. They're always going to try and get a solid team around him, but they can never make it over the hump. I mean, the best time they had with Anthony Davis is when they made it to the second round. That's about it. And the more and more you kind of stay stagnant and not really make the moves that you need to make in order to take your team to the next level, you're just going to keep Zion a bit more impatient. I mean, this guy is going to be a generational talent. And you have these moving pieces around. I mean, Zion Williamson, only his third season, has his third coach in his third there's a third head coaching change. There's just no stability in this Pelicans organization. And with a lot of these moving parts and kind of just, the question mark around his team, the fit, I mean, they have the talent. They have the talent to be a good team. But it's going to be all these changes going to be kind of, setting a bad example, not just to Zion, but kind of to the rest of the team. I mean, if they don't meet expectations again this year, and I think their expectations is making the play-in, possibly making the playoffs, are they going to make another change? I don't think so, especially with first-year head coach Willie Green. I think that this is the one they really want to try and, stick through with. But if they could find stability, I think the number one thing for them this year is to provide stability. And hopefully, I mean, this is Zion's third season. Hopefully they can, make the play-in. I still have a lot of question marks on this team, and honestly, for me, they're four. Like I said, they're too talented to really go past the 13th seed. But I think they are talented enough to possibly, fight for a top 9 seed, maybe. But for me, I'm just not sold just yet. They're gonna have to show me that this fit's gonna work. I'm not a huge fan of letting go of Lonzo Ball and then having his replacement be Devontae Graham. I'm not a huge fan of that, and I just think that there are a lot of teams ahead of them. They're just who are equally or more talented, and I think they're just a lot more stable. Which, especially for this next game I'm talking about, is I'm kind of surprised, but at the same time, there's just a lot of question marks around this Pelicans team. That's why I have them going 11th. Let's move on to number 10, and I believe that the first play-in team that's gonna make it is the Minnesota Timberwolves. 3-0 in preseason, they're looking really good. And last year I predicted them to go 11th. They actually finished 13th, going 23-49. And this year I'm projecting their record to be 40-42. Cat is obviously their best player. One of their key additions this year was Patrick Beverley, and the player to watch this year for me is D'Angelo Russell. When you look at this Timberwolves team, the one thing that comes to mind for me is just how good their offense could be. Because last year we saw a good glimpse of Anthony Edwards averaging almost 20 points a game last year. I think he's going to be a very good player going forward. He is going to be a cornerstone piece. Obviously, Kat last year had to go through a lot, losing a lot of family members, including his own mother. Hopefully he had a good offseason to recoup, and hopefully this year we get to see a lot more of that dominant Cat. And hopefully this year we just get to see a lot more of him and D'Angelo Russell playing together, which, funnily enough, I mean, this is technically the third season together, and they still have barely played with each other, whether it's due to injuries, whether it's due to personal reasons. they just have barely been on the court together. And I think this is probably the first full season where we could see them and the potential of this duo, along with Anthony Edwards into the mix, adding like a solid player like Jaden McDaniels. You look up and down this roster and you look, this team is talented. They're going to be very good offensively. The defense is going to be a question here. The defense is definitely going to be a question here. I mean, ever since Jimmy Butler left, they just have not been a great defensive team. They have Chris Finch. There's their first full season with him, so let's see if his system is going to work over there. I'm just looking at this roster and just think they're very talented. They're very talented, and I think that they're going to be able to make the play-in tournament this year. But I'm not going to keep my head. I'm not going to be fully convinced of that. I think their 4 is still probably going to be the 12th seed, and honestly, I think they can go as high as the 9th seed. But there's still a lot of growing with this team still. They just need to stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing, and just develop the chemistry, especially between that trio of D'Lo, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards. I think if those three together can develop some sort of chemistry and learn how to work together, I think this team could be a great team, especially offensively, possibly top 10. But again, it's just the Timberwolves. There's a lot of question marks. I mean, we don't know how this new head coach is going to play out. We don't know if the D'Angelo Russell, Karl-Anthony Towns fit is going to work. And we just honestly don't know how bad or good this defense is going to be. If they could be in the low 20s, that's honestly a good, it's going to be a good success for them. Looking up and down the roster, they still have honestly solid offensive players like Malik Beasley possibly coming off the bench. Like I said, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid is a solid player. It's a good, talented team. I think this year, finally having some stability on that roster, I think they're going to make the play-in. I have them coming 10th. Coming in at number 9 might be a shock to some people. Some people might have them in their top 8. But for me, a injury to their major star has really dropped them in the rankings for me. And for this, I'm going to be talking about at number 9, the Los Angeles Clippers. Last year I had them finishing 2nd, but they ended up finishing 4th, going 47-25. This year, I have them going 43-39. Their most valuable player is Paul George. Their key addition, their biggest addition this year is adding Eric Bledsoe to the team. And the player to watch for me is Terrence Mann. When you look at the Clippers, I mean, no Kawhi Leonard. He's probably going to be out till, I think reports are saying March, maybe April, possibly the entire season. I still think they're going to make the play-in tournament. And honestly, if Kawhi Leonard returns for the play-in tournament, they're probably going to make it to the playoffs. But in terms of the regular season, losing someone as important as Kawhi Leonard is to that team is going to hurt. It's 100% going to hurt. But I still think they have a solid team. They still have a solid team, with Reggie Jackson, who came off a great playoff run. Paul George, who a borderline top 10 player every single season. This team can go higher. Maybe their ceiling, with a good coach in Tyronn Lue and all that, I think their ceiling could really be a 6 seed. They could possibly be a 6 seed, but at the same time, without Kawhi Leonard, I think the 9 seed is probably their floor, maybe the 10 seed. But they still have decent talent around them. They brought back some guys in Nick Batum, Reggie Jackson, Justice Winslow. But not so on their point guard position. Training for Eric Bledsoe is for me not. If you know me in this podcast, I'm not a huge Eric Bledsoe fan. They have solid players on that team. Paul George is still like I said, a borderline top 10 player. He is an extremely good player. Going to be all NBA probably this year, and he can put up MVP type numbers. But I think the biggest thing here, and for them to really go higher than the 9th seed, is seeing how Terrence Mann develops. He ended off the season, especially in the playoffs, extremely well, and I think he is one of those people who are primed to have a breakout season. Especially without Kawhi Leonard there, he could really assume the role. I'm not sure if he's going to start, maybe coming off the bench, but I think this guy is going to be a huge part of this team, and he's going to continue to develop. And with that confidence he got last year, we've seen that the talent's there, and he's going to be one of those guys to look out for this team. They're going to be well coached. They have an okay roster up and down, but without Kawhi Leonard, I don't see them being better than a lot of the teams in front of them. That's why I have them at number 9. Coming at number 8, we're going to be talking about a team who had some drama this offseason. Their star looking like he was going to request a trade, but ultimately he didn't. But they basically still have the same loss as last year, and they have the coming 8th. Let's talk about the Portland Trailblazers. Last year had the Trailblazers finishing 4th, but they ended up finishing 6th, going 42-30, so a solid season. This year, I'm predicting them to go 45-37. I think that this team, same roster as last year, basically. They still have their main guys there, but how good can they really be? The most valuable player for me is still Damian Lillard. One of their key additions this year, who I think is going to play a huge part for this team, Larry Nance Jr., they acquired him from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the player to watch for me is Norman Powell. Again, their roster relatively similar to last year. They still got the Dame and CJ backcourt. They re-signed Norman Powell to a 5-year, $90 million deal. And, this team, up and down the roster, they're good, but they're not great. And I think that's the story of the Trailblazers, especially with this Dame and CJ backcourt. We always expect them to do a punch over their weight, but they've shown us time and time again that they are a good team. They are good, and no one's disputing that. But they're not great. They're not going to take that next step to be a great team. And last year, I was super high on them. They had them going 4th. They ended up going 6th. But there's still that cloud looming around the team. Will Dame request a trade? Will it will not happen? And, I think the real thing they really focused on here this offseason was not really messing with their main core, which I thought, after what transpired last season, losing to the Denver Nuggets in 6 games without Jamal Murray on that team, I thought there were going to be some major changes to that core. And nothing really changed. I mean, they added some depth. Cool. They brought in Larry Nance Jr. They brought in Cody Zeller. That should improve their defense. It's one of the worst defenses last year. That should improve them. But, again, just not enough major changes for me to say, look, they're going to be, a possible 4 seed. I don't think so. For me, their floor is the 9th seed, and they can honestly go as high as the 5th seed. But they're good, not great. I think that's a story with this Portland Trailblazer team. Dame's going to put up MVP numbers. CJ's going to be solid again. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. And hopefully they can get a full healthy year of Nurk as well. I mean, we don't know how good his defense is going to be. I mean, last year when they brought in, they had Covington, they brought in Derrick Jones Jr. We thought this team was going to be mightily improved defensively, and that was not the case. Hopefully now that that's going to improve, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually finish as the 6th or 7th seed again, just avoid the play-in. But what's going to happen past that? I don't know. I still think even if they make it to the playoffs, they're going to be either first or second round exit, and it's going to be another year of Lillard's prime kind of wasted. And with a new head coach here in Chauncey Billups, there's still going to be some struggles there, especially early on. I just hope that this team can, surprise some people, and they have the potential to do that, especially with how good Damian Lillard is. But with the whole possible trade situation happening down the line, whether it's at the trade deadline or the offseason, that's going to be looming around the team. And the fact that chemistry is obviously going to be on their side. I mean, they basically have the same roster, but if they couldn't get it done, for the past 4 years, what's going to change now? That's my mentality with this. That's why I have the Trailblazers going 8th. Coming at number 7 is a team I was actually right on the money with last year. I thought they were going to go 5th. They ended up finishing 5th. I'm going to be talking about the Dallas Mavericks. This year, having them finishing 7th, obviously their most valuable player is Luka Doncic. Their key addition has been Reggie Bullock, and the player to watch is Kristaps Porzingis. Again, same thing with the Portland Trailblazers team. They didn't do much to their core lineup, and I just think that they're in a situation they're kind of a victim of the other teams got better in the West. I don't think Dallas did. I mean, their biggest moves was that they traded for Moses Brown, who's going to be a third center for them. They re-signed Tim Hardaway Jr. to a good contract, re-signed Boban. They brought in Sterling Brown and Reggie Bullock. But this team is, again, a good, not great team. And the thing is, they could possibly be a great team. But like I said, in my player to watch, Kristaps Porzingis, he did well in the regular season last year. I'm not going to deny that because he was averaging, even though he still missed some games due to injury, he was still averaging 20 points a game, 9 rebounds. It's just that rough playoff run is what, sticks in everyone's mind, and that's why people are very, doubtful on Porzingis at this point in time. And another thing with this team that really has me kind of scratching my head is them bringing in Jason Kidd. I don't think he's going to be a great fit with Luka Doncic. I think both of them have like very strong egos, and I think they're going to be like bickering a lot towards in the season. I just think with this Dallas Mavericks team, you got a generational talent in Luka Doncic. Are you sure that Kristaps Porzingis is going to be a number 2 guy? I think Mark Cuban is going to try and stick with it, but they're just like they're the same as last year. They really are. And can they? I mean, they pushed the Clippers to 7 games, which is great. But is Luka is already all is good. We already know what we're gonna get from him. It's just the other supporting pieces for me is just a big question mark here with this team. Another new coaching change here, and just the shot creation around Luka Doncic is what's like has me concerned. I mean, Luka Doncic is gonna get the majority of the offense. Tim Hardaway Jr. is gonna help him out here and there, but past that, I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith, good off-ball player. He's really the defensive guy. And a lot of these guys are just good role players and not really like a second perimeter star. And I think that's really like the next step for the Dallas Mavericks is if you can keep Porzingis, if you can keep Luka Doncic, try and trade for like a second star, especially on the perimeter for Luka to kind of take the pressure off of him to try and develop every single play, setting up others, setting up for himself. They just need another guy like that in like on the wings in the backcourt. Just something to help out Luka. And they didn't really make that change this offseason. They added a bit more depth with Reggie Bullock, who I think is going to be a good piece for them. But, you know, they had to trade away Josh Richardson. Again, good but not great team. They can go as high for me as the 5th seed like they did last year. And they can go as low as the 9th seed. But for this season, I know Luka doesn't like the play-in tournament, but I have them in the play-in tournament. I have them going 7th. Coming at number 6, it's going to be my shock of the season for me. Like one of the teams who I think is going to really take that huge jump because of kind of like, and it's mostly due to like in-house, like the development in their organization. I think this team is going to shock a lot of people, and I think they made the playoffs last year. I think they're going to have like a nice big jump this year. For me, coming at number 6, I have the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, they did lose Jonas Valanciunas, who was a great piece for them. But if you look at their roster, I mean, I'm a fan. I'm just a big fan of the team that they got going on here. They got Triple J for a full season, which is great. Brandon Clark. And honestly, the big guy I want to focus on here is John Morant. John Morant I have as their most valuable player. I mean, they added Steven Adams. They traded away Valanciunas and stuff like that. But if we just look at John Morant, right? He's a very good player, and I think he's shown in the playoffs that he could take his game to that next level. I think this year we're going to get a massive year out of John Morant, and I mean a massive year. John Morant has not like eclipsed 20 points per game yet. He's definitely improving every single season, but I think this is where he kind of takes his stock and moves it from here all the way to here. I expect him to average like 24 points a game, near 10 assists. I think this is going to be a huge breakout season for John. Hopefully he could be his first All-Star appearance. You look around that team, they drafted Zaire Williamson, Santi Aldama as well with the last pick of the first round. And they did a good job, getting rid of some just dead contracts. Whether it was, Eric Bledsoe's contract, they were able to trade away, Jonas Valanciunas, for Steven Adams, which is obviously Steven Adams is the worst player, but I still think he could be solid for them. I'm just looking at John Morant and thinking he's bound to be, put himself in a possible top 5 point guard conversation soon, and I think this is the season to do so. They got Dylan Brooks. They got a solid lineup in Kyle Anderson, Triple J. I mentioned Brandon Clark already, and then even their bench players like Xavier Tillman, solid player. DeAnthony Melton, solid player. Desmond Bane. They just do a good job there in developing their talent in-house. And I think Taylor Jenkins has done a good job with this team, having them compete every year. Last season, they finished with a 38-34 record, and they won 2 play-in games to make it to the playoffs. So I think that with that confidence going into this season, I really do think that the Memphis Grizzlies is going to be that one team who's going to take the jump and is going to surprise a lot of people. I mean, they basically have the same roster as last year, minus Jonas Valanciunas, swapping him for Steven Adams. But a full year of Triple J, like I said, once again. And the fact that these guys are developing every single season, I think that they're gonna make a nice big jump here. I have them going 6th. Honestly, they could drop to as far as 9. Honestly, but I think that this year, I'm gonna go with my gut here. I have the Memphis Grizzlies going 6th, and they don't for the first time they're not gonna be in the play-in tournament, which is nice for them. And hopefully, I'm really hoping Ja really takes the next step going forward. They have a good coach team. They're going to be a fun team to watch this season. Just be on the lookout for the Memphis Grizzlies. Coming at number 5, I have the Golden State Warriors. Last year, predicted them to go 6th, but they ended up finishing 8th, going 39-33, and they missed out on the playoffs. This year, I'm predicting them to go 48-34. Wait, I didn't talk about the Grizzlies yet. I had them actually going 47-35. But back to the Warriors, I have them going just under 50 wins. Steph Curry, for me, is their most valuable player. They added some nice rookies there, and Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. They also brought in some veteran players, bringing back Andre Iguodala. They brought in Otto Porter and also signing Nemanja Bjelica. The thing about this Golden State Warriors team, and then I think going into the season, they're just one of the most confusing teams to kind of figure out. Klay Thompson is expected to be back by Christmas, and he should be good going forward. I mean, even though he did have 2 major leg injuries, and that's definitely going to affect his game, especially defensively, I think he'll still be fine offensively just because he's not going to be attacking the rim all the time. His gate play style, I think, allows him to have a prolonged career. But, they still have their core on Dre, Steph, and Klay. Steph is going to be an MVP candidate. Dre's going to do what Dre does, but it's just the players around them is my question mark here. It's not like the old Golden State Warriors teams where you have a bunch of proven veterans who've been to the finals before, who knows what it takes to get there. I mean, they still have their head coach in Steve Kerr, but if you look around the roster, I mean, they have a bunch of guys here that are solid players and players with good potential if you're looking at their rookies. But can they help them right here, right now? They brought in Avery Bradley. They still have, people like Damian Lee. Hopefully someone like Jordan Poole takes a nice good step forward because he's been doing really well in the preseason. But, bringing in Otto Porter Jr., how much is he going to affect that team? And, they brought back Andre Iguodala, but can Kuminga, can Moses Moody really help this team right away? Can James Wiseman, get back healthy and be that solid center for them? I mean, on paper, they have potential to still be, a top 3 seed if things all go right. But they can go also as low as 5 or 6. They could be back in the play-in if, the fit isn't there. They're going to have Curry, and that's why they're 100% going to make the playoffs. And hopefully this year, a lot of them just come to the season healthy, and we could see, a nice full season, at least mostly with this team. But it's just what direction do the Warriors want to go? Because I honestly think that it's a nice mix of they still got their core guys, but these young guys for the team, are they really going to help them win now? And that's really my big question with this team. There's a possibility for this team to maybe make a move before the trade deadline, trading someone like a James Wiseman, Moody, Kuminga. I believe that they're still all going to be potential trade pieces to bring in for another. I wouldn't say superstar, but maybe another scoring option, a star level type player, especially for maybe a center or wing position. But looking at this team, they're good. I mean, the good thing is also Andrew Wiggins got the vaccination, so he's going to be able to play all games this season. They're a good team, and they can honestly, like I said, they can go as high as the 3rd seed, but there's just a lot of question marks for me. And we don't know, still how Klay's going to be when he gets back, if he's going to be kind of a slow roll or he's going to get back right away to being that Klay Thompson we know and love. We don't know that yet, and I think that's why I think having them 5th is just a good place just because I'm just not too sure about this team. We already know what we're going to get from Steph, but the other guys, a lot of question marks. I have them going 5th. Coming in number 4, we have to talk about the other LA team. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Last year, I predicted them to finish 3rd, but they ended up going 7th and losing in the first round. This season, I project them to go 50-32. Their most valuable players, LeBron James, player to watch Anthony Davis, and their key addition is Russell Westbrook. As seen in the preseason, I think this is going to take some time for this team to gel. Russ has looked absolutely horrible. Anthony Davis has looked good, but again, those concerns we had in the regular season, they're kind of valid. For me, they're kind of valid just because they brought in a bunch of old guys who are proven for sure and are good role players. But one of the biggest things we're looking at here is, there's not a lot of like nice, like not even like much of a future for this like Lakers team. I mean, there's not a lot of young guys, and they also just honestly just brought in just a bunch of names. I still think they're going to be a very good team, especially because they have LeBron, AD. Hopefully, he can stay healthy this year. And Russell Westbrook, we know he's going to stay on the court a lot. But it's just a fit, man. It's just a fit. How things are going to work together. Is there going to be enough three-point shooting on this team? I don't know. They just have a bunch of guys here, and we saw what happened like in the preseason. Taylor Horton-Tucker has to get surgery on his thumb, so he's going to miss like a good amount of weeks to start off the season. So already injuries coming into play. We don't know if LeBron and AD are going to play, 75% of the games. That's something to still look out for. And Russell Westbrook, I mean, how's he going to fit with this team? I mean, it's looking rough so far, but they have talent. Look, I think like the main point I want to make here is that they have talent to like still be like a really good team. But the fit's just going to take time, and I think it's going to take some time for this team to get the ball rolling. And that's fine. I think eventually they could still be a title contender just because they have a LeBron and Anthony Davis, Westbrook trio. But they're going to drop the four just because they're going to have a slow start to the season. I could bet you that. I still think they're going to be a really good team. Obviously, if you have LeBron and AD, you still have a chance to win the finals. I don't think they're going to be like a title contender for sure, but they're not going to be number one in these standings for sure in the regular season. I just hope that Russell Westbrook still does good. Obviously they still have Frank Vogel as the head coach for that team, but it's just gonna the biggest thing here is just to see how they're gonna gel. Honestly, they have a lot of old guys. I don't know how much they're gonna try in the regular season, but I still think they're gonna get at least home court for at least the first round. So, number 4, give me the Los Angeles Lakers. Coming at number 3, let's talk about the Denver Nuggets, man. Let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. I have them going third. I have their ceiling for me. I mean, if we talk about, let's go back to the Lakers for a second. Their ceiling, probably like a second or first seed. Their floor, probably maybe a 6th seed if it just doesn't work out all season. For me, let's go back to the Denver Nuggets though at number 3. Last year I've had them finishing first, but they ended up finishing third, 47-25 last year. This season I think they're gonna have a good season, 54-28. The MVP is Luka Jokic, Nikola Jokic. Is it Luka Jokic? Oh my gosh. Key addition, Jeff Green, and the player to watch this year is Michael Porter Jr. And look, I know Jamal Murray is not going to play probably for the regular season. Maybe he might come back in March. Let's hope and see. But I still think with this Denver Nuggets team, they're just talented enough that they're going to have just a really good regular season. I mean, Nikola Jokic is a freaking Iron Man, knock on wood. Hopefully he doesn't get injured this year, but he's been relatively healthy in terms of playing games throughout his career. They gave that massive contract to Michael Porter Jr., hoping that he can, fulfill his potential and be a possible second or third scoring option for this team, and reach kind of star potential. And if you just look at this Denver Nuggets roster, I mean, very similar to last year. They still got Mike Malone as their head coach. They just know how to play together. They know how to pull out wins, especially in the regular season. Hopefully, Jamal Murray honestly could just come back and. If they can come back before the regular season ends, hopefully get some playoff time. The Denver Nuggets can shock a lot of teams again. I mean, if Jamal healthy was healthy since from the get-go, from the start of the regular season, I'd probably have the team going number 1 in the West. But I still think that they're a solid team. But without Jamal Murray, I don't think they have the capability of going number 1. Another thing to look out here is kind of that backup big man position. I know they lost one of their backup bigs last year. I mean, 2 years ago they had Mason Plumlee. Now they think they're gonna have to stick with just Bol. They added Jeff Green, which is good depth. They still have Aaron Gordon and stuff. I still think it's gonna be a really good team, but without Jamal Murray, they're not gonna make it really. I don't think they can get the 1 seed. But this is a very good team. Jokic is gonna play absolutely awesome again this year, and I think a training camp with a lot of these guys is good. I think the Michael Porter Jr. situation is still up in the air. We don't know if he's vaccinated or not, so we don't know if he's gonna be playing the full 82 games. But we'll have to wait and see. This team is very good from top to bottom, and what I like about this team is that they could because of the way they're coached, They're going to be an awesome offensive team, but they still have the pieces to be a good defensive team as well. Excited to see them play again this year. Honestly, one of the most fun teams to watch, 100%. Denver Nuggets, I have them coming third. Coming in at number 2, we're going to talk about a team that was the number 1 seed last year, kind of flamed out in the playoffs, but again, I think they're going to have another good regular season. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. Last year, I have them finishing 7th in the West. Oh boy, did they prove me wrong. They finished first, going 52-20. 52-20 last year. They had a fantastic season. And I think they have another great one this year in the regular season, going 58-24. Their best player is Donovan Mitchell. Their key addition has been Rudy Gay. And the player to watch this year is Rudy Gobert. And for me, I'm going to keep it plain simple with the Utah Jazz. They are a very good regular season team. I think they have a chance to get 60 wins this year. They're going to continue to play well in the regular season just because, especially with Rudy Gobert being a constant DPOY candidate, and now they add some depth to their team. I think they're going to have another great regular season. It's really just going to be a question of them going to the playoffs and how that's going to work, because again, Rudy Gobert was just being completely abused by the small lineup of the Clippers last playoffs, and I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to fix up for next season, but for the playoffs this season, when they make it. But for the regular season, we know what they're about. Donovan Mitchell is going to average 25, 26 points a game. Rudy Gobert is going to be in the mix for DPOY again. Jordan Clarkson is going to put up some points off the bench, and they just play well together. They know how to pass. They know how to defend. They're going to be top 10 in both categories. We know what they're about. But the question is, how good can they be in the playoffs? Because they can honestly be a first, second seed for the West, and I think honestly, I would be surprised if they do not get home court advantage at least for the first 2 rounds, at least for the first round for sure. But the Utah Jazz, they're going to continue to play well. They still got Bojan Bogdanovic there. They re-signed Mike Conley to a 3-year, $70-something million deal. They still got most of their pieces back. I mean, the chemistry is going to be there. It's just how they're going to adjust come playoff time. That's the biggest question for the Jazz, and it's something hopefully Quinn Snyder can develop a game plan which is that could benefit them come to playoff time and kind of hide Gobert's weakness of defending the perimeter. We're gonna have to wait and see on that, but at the end of the day, and at least talking about regular season purely, they have the pieces. They know what they're gonna do in the regular season. We know what they're about. For me, they're gonna come second, which means if the Utah Jazz at number 2, there's obviously one team I'm missing. The defending Western Conference champions, the Phoenix Suns, I believe are going to be the number 1 seed. Last year, I predicted them to go 8th after adding Chris Paul. And man, did they blow those expectations out the water, because they came second and made the Western Conference and made the NBA Finals for the first time since the Charles Barkley days. They ended up finishing second, going 51-21. And this year, I have their record being 61-21 this year. The most valuable player is Devin Booker. Their key addition is JaVale McGee, and the player to watch for me is DeAndre Ayton. Let's look at this team. I mean, the Phoenix Suns, what I like about this team is kind of how well they play for each other, and kind of how much they trust each other, and just how much they trust in the head coach as well. They develop a game plan. They brought in Monty Williams. It's just dating back into the bubble, where they went 8-0. That built a lot of confidence in them, and I think after making the finals last year, I think they're ready. They're hungry to get back. Devin Booker, I think, is going to take another good step this year. Hopefully, he can get to a near 30-point per game mark. Chris Paul, we know what he's about. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a borderline top 5 point guard for them. They brought back Cameron Payne, which is great because he was awesome for them in the playoffs. But for me, the thing I want to focus on here is how DeAndre Ayton is going to be used in this lineup. Because there are already reports that DeAndre Ayton is trying to negotiate with the Suns a new contract because this is his 4th season in the league. But they cannot come to terms on the max deal that DeAndre Ayton wants. And honestly, I believe, is he worth a max contract? Maybe, maybe not. That is definitely debatable. But the way he played last year in the playoffs, he took his game to another level, especially defensively. I think if you look at his projection and potential, you got to give him the money. You got to give him the money. And especially trying to develop this young core together, you need to have him as part of that, especially being the number 1 overall pick they drafted in the Luka Doncic draft. But for me, like, DeAndre Ayton, I was hoping that last year he was going to be the second scoring option. That wasn't the case. I think it was still kind of Chris Paul at the end of the day. But this year, they have to make him the number 2 scoring option. They need to actually step some place for him to get into the paint and just find ways for him to be involved on the offensive end. I'm hoping to see like a 21-12 type of season for DeAndre Ayton this year with like good defensive development as well. But keeping the team together, I mean, the only players they really lost was Torrey Craig and Javon Carter. I think with like this Phoenix Suns team is that they get to grow in-house together, and they were like 2 games away from winning the NBA championship. I mean, they're there. I mean, people want to talk about, they had to do like they avoided a lot of teams with like injuries and stuff like that, and that's a fair point. But this team like proved in the regular season that they are a very good team, and they proved it again in the playoffs. So I think like that's like a good indication that that they are still like a very, very good team. With Devin Booker, hopefully like catapulting himself to a near top 10 discussion as well. With a good coach, with Chris Paul like being re-signed to that team, I still think that the team is gonna do really well in the regular season. And I think honestly, they're gonna want the number 1 seed and try and get home court advantage throughout. So coming at number 1, we got the Phoenix Suns. They're a good offensive team, a great defensive team. They're just a good team up and down the roster, and this team is made it to the finals, so they just know what it's all about. And yeah, I think this is going to be a fun team to watch again this year. I have them going number 1 in the West. But those are my top 15 in the West. Let me know down below what you guys think. Do I have some teams too high? Do I have some teams too low? Let me know. But I think this is where we're going to today's episode. It's almost been an hour in, but I'm going to end it here. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Remember to show love on all the podcast channels. Like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And remember to hit the notification bell. Follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and other great content. And be on the lookout for the Eastern preview coming this Friday. Whether it's by myself, whether it's with a guest, be on the lookout for that. And again, just thank you guys for all the support. Going to be back to doing 2 episodes a week. And with the NBA season just around the corner, I'm excited to talk about it and just be able to watch the NBA once again. But yeah, thank you guys for all the support. Hope you have a fantastic day. Take it easy, guys. TV signing out.